Look, if we're being real here, as far as video game movie adaptations go, it could have been a lot worse.
It's too late.
Robbie, go!
And today we have the long-awaited Five Nights at Freddy's. On the off chance that I managed to somehow piss off hardcore fans, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan as well, but I've worn a very wholesome Game Grumps shirt, so don't be mean, I'm baby, please don't. I low-key have been hesitant about reviewing this film because I know the fan base is very vocal, and I've been seeing some of the online discourse, but I'm just going to review this how I would review any other film, based on quality of the film and my personal enjoyment. When I went, I was probably the biggest fan. I had a friend who was a decently big fan, and two other friends that knew nothing about what we were about to go see. Five Nights at Freddy's is a movie adaptation based off of a now long-running video game series turned into major franchise, basically. All started from a game where you sit in a security office in a abandoned pizzeria, and you're security. You're supposed to watch the monitors for any malfeasance, any nuisances. But of course, in this, there are animatronics, and once you're in the security position, they start kind of moving around at night, and over the course of nights, they get more aggressive, and your life is in danger. And that one game did so well that it spawned more games, a book, more games, merchandise, toys, Funko Pops, plushies, all this, and the lore starts getting deeper, and the creator was like, oh my god, people really like this song, so just kept making games and expanding and rewriting and making more lore, and just, the rest is history. It took a while, it was in development hell for a minute, but eventually, boom, Blumhouse, however you want to call it, they got their hands on it, and now here we are. Director of Five Nights at Freddy's is an Emma Tammy. I never heard of her. She's been making content, but it's kind of limited in its scope. On IMDb, the most notable stuff that she's done were a couple episodes from a show called Into the Dark, of which I've not seen, as well as I believe it's a full-length feature called The Wind. Really, that's it. A lot of people are in this, but I think the two main ones are, you guessed it, Josh Hutcherson from all the trailers and all that, your boy, who most known by people of my generation probably for his role as PETA in the Hunger Games, understandably so. For me, he's more my boy from like Zathura. That was my bread and butter and one of my favorite roles of his. Longer filmography than that. This man seems to never age. He still looks like a kid. Good casting call for this. He's a known quantity, a good name to put behind this. And the other one is actually her first movie. She's been in TV series and straight to TV films in the past, but Piper Rubio, this is her first feature-length, full feature-length in a theater debut in a film, and all that being considered, props. Worth mentioning because she's in it so much and because I didn't realize who this was until I did research because her hair's up through most of the movie, but we have Elizabeth Lail, I believe is how you say her name. She was Guinevere Beck in You. Wild, right? Honestly, the primary reason that I went to go see it, aside from being curious to see how they would handle Five Nights at Freddy's, I love Matthew Lillard. It's like one of those Keanu Reeves types. Everybody loves him. He never really makes anybody upset, and people love to dig into older films he's done, and they'll become cult classics, and he keeps acting to this day, cast perfectly in this, in a role that, let's be honest, if you're a fan of this franchise, we all saw it coming. We all know exactly who he was cast to play. Don't act surprised. You got two brain cells, rub them together. He was cast well for this role, and we all knew what the role was going to be. Five Nights at Freddy's. Alright, look, so I will agree with the fans. I don't know why I speak as if I'm not one of them. I think the critics were a little bit harsh on this film, I think. For me, I was curious to see if this film could exist in a vacuum, or if you had to be familiar with the game and the lore. Overall, this film was an enjoyable experience. We saw it opening night and in a nearly packed house. And this may have been the most vocal, like loudest auditorium that I've ever seen a movie in. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy a nice, energized crowd. I was there for all the Marvel movies, especially Infinity War, Endgame. I don't mind crowd reactions, cheering and all that. People were like frothing at the mouth. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being facetious. You know me, I have a tendency to play things up for the sake of a good story, but none of this is an exaggeration. These kids, and a lot of them were kids, these people were going feral in there. The usual cheering and like the ooh and all, but like people were just like, there was a individual, a gentleman to be polite, behind me, I shit you not, who was just like, oh my god, oh, it's Freddy, oh, I can't believe it, oh, like for most of the movie. Like you would not go 20, 30 seconds in this film without something audibly happening around you. And it's like even the small stuff, like it was a Josh Hutcherson reaches over and accidentally breaks his sister's crayon, and this kid behind me would be like, oh, he broke her crayon. And like, cameos in the movie. We knew there were going to be cameos in the film. Matt Pat, the game theorist who made part of his career off the back of this franchise, has a cameo in this. Guess cool cameo. I didn't hear what he said. I would have loved to have heard a word of dialogue, but as soon as that man showed up, the auditorium, oh my god, holy shit, oh, and then over the entire scene, I didn't hear a peep out of this man, and I was like, oh my god, like, I never got mad, but like, it was just the energy. You couldn't help but feed off of the excitement and the positivity, but also, if you know me, I usually don't like interruptions during film, but what are you gonna do, right? What are you gonna do? Like, I should have known this was gonna happen. But I mean, these people were like overreacting to everything. Obvious connections, like, oh wait, he's the guy. And then a creepy moment with the animatronic, like, oh my god, look at the cupcake. Oh my god, Chica, you think Chica's gonna do that? It was so funny. There'd be moments where like a character pops up on screen and people are like, oh my god, whoa, what's going on? And they said something that was clearly important, and literally a guy out loud in the theater was like, wait, hold on a second, what did he say? I missed it. I'm like, really? Was it because you were talking over him? Like, gee whiz, I wonder what happened. Getting back to the task at hand. The source material was adapted and handled very well as far as adaptations go. I've seen my fair share of video game based films in the past, most of which they just don't work. But this one, all things considered, they were able to adapt this into a narrative that fit the constraints of like an hour and 45-minute film. Did they do it to perfection? Like, oh my god, this is a masterpiece of a film? No, it's not. They kind of did what that Dark Tower movie did. Dark Tower tried to take the entirety of the franchise of what Stephen King wrote and take aspects out of different books and different parts of the story and lore and cram it into an hour 45 and make it make sense, and it did not work. This film does take aspects from various games in the franchise and the series and different lore elements and the Easter eggs. Oh my god, the Easter eggs. Takes all of it, puts it into this, and surprisingly enough, as someone who is fairly fluent in the lore of the universe, this gumbo tastes pretty good. I personally enjoyed all the Easter eggs and references, whether it was a shirt a character was wearing in reference to something, whether it was something in the pizzeria, a drawing on a wall. There are Easter eggs abound. I mean, Balloon Boy, the security office itself, it's like ripped straight out of the game. The attention to detail is admirable. The animatronics, that was one of the big ones I put as a positive. They built these things. Sick. That's great. Props to the prop department, and I think they spent 2 months of conceptualization, design, and building. They look like full, huge, the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics you'd see back in the day. The location of the pizzeria of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria is brought to life very, very well. The story for the film is good, I suppose, considering the circumstances. It's not like the best narrative, so like a story was kind of written and built around this. I mean, it's fine. Like, the story of our characters is merely serviceable in that it like services the Five Nights at Freddy's narrative, the world, the lore that we're going to start building up on for the cinematic universe of FNAF. We're writing in these characters and their lives and their plights and all that to like fit and to help propel that narrative. So all that considered, that's good in its own right. But in a vacuum, is this a great story? I mean, it's fine. It's a fine story. If we look at this film by itself, like standing on its own 2 feet, I think it works significantly less than it does as a film that's adapting a game that you might already be familiar with or have a fondness or certain reverence for. The movie has some fairly cheesy, cringy moments. I don't know. The whole point of FNAF is to milk the inherent creepiness, the vibe of Chuck E. Cheese, which always was, pretty unsettling for most kids, most people in general, turn like horror and spookiness out of it. And I don't know if that film did a lot of that. I don't know. Pacing issues in Act 2. It's that fallacy of like when you're playing the game, after the first, night, things are a little bit weird, but you'd go back to work. But after night 2, as soon as the animatronics start coming after you, I don't care how desperate you are for a paycheck, why would you go back is the question. I don't care if the owner or manager or security overnight operator is like, oh, don't mind the animatronics, they do get a bit quirky at night. Like, no, I don't care. It's a logical fallacy that is illogical that I still apply to the games and to the movie. But that's just me being... Act 2, they take some breaks, especially like late Act 2, to basically like specify, to give more detail to their agency and what's motivating and driving them and all that. And I get that, but for a movie that's supposed to be about this pizzeria, I think there's almost too much focus on the characters involved in this whole scenario. I loved Matthew Lillard in this movie, no complaints there. I think he's underused. I think Matthew Lillard is underused in Five Nights at Freddy's, and I'm sure the future of the franchise, there's potential for that character. But as for this movie, my personal, just me, little old me, I love him. I would have loved to have seen more, and I thought that there wasn't enough of him. And I think my biggest complaint with the film, people are arguing online in general about oh, it's PG-13, oh, it's not gruesome and violent and bloody and gory and not nightmare fuel. I don't think it needs to be that, but I do think it needed to be creepier. I think it needed to be spookier. I didn't have a problem with the whole having fun as kids and all that, because that's what kids would do. I didn't have a problem with that scene per se if it was balanced out by more scenes of the creepy animatronics. For a movie about Five Nights at Freddy's, yes, we spend 5 nights at Freddy's, but I would have liked there to have been more creeps and bumps in the night and more of the horror elements, basically, especially for a creepy Halloween movie. I get it, maybe you can't scare the kids too much, but for some of the messed up stuff that does happen in this movie, I think you could have added 25% more. I'll give you the rating that I'm going to give it, but I'll also give you my experience rating just for the fun of it. Overall, Five Nights at Freddy's works really well as an adaptation of its source material. If you're a fan, or if you like that concept, then I think you're going to enjoy this movie. I think then it's good. And for me, I'm in those shoes. I thought it was, it was good. I'd say maybe due to what it does, it's above average. It's an above average film that I would give on my rating scale a high 3 out of 5 to. I don't agree with a lot of the fans that are like, oh, it's perfect, this thing was fire, bro, it's so great, it's everything we hoped for. I don't agree with that, but I also don't agree with the critics who are saying it's rotten. And I think what IGN gave it a 4, again, like with my Dial of Destiny review, if you give a film that low of a score, that basically has the implication that it fails as a film on almost every front, and I hard disagree with that. This film doesn't pass the test with flying colors, granted, but this film is not dog poo-poo. This film is good. It's good. At the very least, it's a decent film, a decent watch. As wild, as visceral, as feral as those kids were in that auditorium, and I've never heard kids go more cuckoo bananas for a film, it was entertaining, and you couldn't help but feed off of that energy. I had a modicum of excitement as well going into this film, but my excitement was almost quadrupled by the people around me. So as an experience, I would give it a low 4 out of 5. I'd give it a low 4 out of 5 for the overall experience of it. I gotta admit, as someone who part of my growing up was also with this franchise, watching the, everybody from Markiplier to PewDiePie, whoever, watching all the YouTubers react, watching MatPat on Game Theory do all of his theories over the years, and me following the lore and being invested and curious, and all the... I've been following this since day one when the first game came out. So yeah, of course, part of me feels a certain fondness for the franchise and a certain level of admiration, if not excitement, for seeing how well they adapt it. But, I can't have blinders on. I can't put on a pair of rose-colored glasses. I gotta admit, this film is not perfect. It has its faults. I don't think it's trash, but it's certainly not a masterpiece. As a film, above average. As an experience, low 4 out of 5. We came full circle, and I liked that. It was cool. I like seeing stuff from video games adapted well. Last of Us is a perfect example. It's a more recent example, but even this is cool seeing it. It was cool seeing it on the big screen, and I'm glad that it's successful, and I'm definitely down for a series. I would love to watch more of these movies. I'm here for it. By all means, comment below. Maybe this will kind of blow up. Maybe this will be a forum for discussion, or maybe people will just shit on me for forever now. I don't know, but those are my thoughts and opinions. What did you think? Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.